Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my weekly compendium ending on October 4th, 2021. Case file number 310, written by Ban the Dr. Mains. Hey, my backpack. Why are you here and how did you get here? Context. If you walk into my room, you'll see my bed plus desk on the left side of my room, a long heater and a small bookshelf on the wall in front of you, and a dresser and desk on the right side of the room. Now this event happened on a Tuesday, but on Monday, I came home from work and put some groceries away and put my backpack down in the living room by the dining table and went to take the trash out, shower, and then go to bed. So Tuesday night I'm hanging out with my roommate, and she suggests we go smoke some weed. We head over to my room, and she sits on my bed facing the wall that my heater is on, basically kinda in the middle of the room. I forgot my lighter, so I went to the living room to grab it and came back. I then started opening a package that contained a longer Ethernet cable, and she said she needed to pee before we started smoking. I unplugged the smaller Ethernet cable out of my router and PC while she comes back in and sits in the same spot. I showed her my new cable, and she points at my heater. Again, she has a full view of most of my room, especially in the middle, and mentioned something about the heater and cable. Forgot exactly what she said. I then plugged the cable into my router and PC, and then go under my desk to move my PC back into place. As I come back up and turn around, my backpack is sitting in the middle of my room. I thought, that's weird. Why would she bring my backpack in here? And then said, where did that come from? She looks down and is in just as much shock as I am because she would have seen it when she pointed to my heater. We kinda freaked out about it for a second, but tried to forget about it. Super weird. Case file number 311, written by C. Landfill. This isn't my cat. I moved back to Illinois from Dallas a month ago and hadn't seen my cat in about 7 months. I know what my cat looks like, and I look at saved pictures I have of her from time to time. My mom would send current photos while I was gone as well. She is a skinny gray cat with a triangular-shaped facial structure. I've had her since she was a kitten, and she's always been that way. The day I arrived home, I called her name expecting her to come running to me crying and being dramatic, but she just stood there and watched me. She let me pet her, but she wasn't like her usual self. I was immediately shocked at how round her face was and how it looked like she had put on a healthy weight. She has always been very skinny. I brought this up to my mom and she didn't notice anything. It felt like I literally had a different cat. The very next day, I woke up and went into the living room, and when she saw me, she acted like it was the first time she'd seen me and did the whole dance of crying and jumping up to me, and she had followed me around like a clingy baby for the last month like she always did. The other thing is, she looks normal now. It's like she lost 2 pounds overnight and her head was back to its normal shape. I'm convinced the initial cat wasn't my cat and at some point they switched places. Of course, I can never prove this and nobody else noticed when I brought it up. Case file number 312, written by Cleo140, a coin from the past? I was leaving for work in a rush a few days ago, and on my way out of the bedroom, I stepped on a 20-pence coin that was on the floor of the doorway. I thought that was really weird, because my change stays in my purse in my bag, and I have no reason to take it out while at home. My partner doesn't even keep change in the house. He keeps it at work for the coffee machine, so I couldn't figure out why it would have ended up there. I just left it as I was rushing and forgot about it. When I came home that evening, a parcel had arrived. The instructions for assembling it recommended using a coin to turn a big screw. Since I was assembling it on the floor right beside the entrance to the bedroom, I remember thinking, what a cool coincidence that a 20-pence coin is lying right here where I need it. However, when I turned to get the coin, it wasn't there anymore. I had not put it away and my partner wasn't home yet, so I couldn't work out where it had gone. But again, I shrugged it off and went to get a 20-pence coin from my purse. I used a coin to turn the screw and put it down out of the way while I finished up. When I was done and tidying up, I realized I had put the coin down in the same place as where I had stepped on the first coin. I followed this up for a while, and I can't help thinking maybe I somehow placed down the coin and it appeared in that spot briefly in the past? If not, that's a pretty weird coincidence. Case notes. So this represents a notion of time where if you travel in the past, you're not creating an alternate universe, which is one theorized way to avoid paradoxes. Because otherwise, if you're traveling back into one singular timeline, you could travel back in time before you travel back in time. Or you could travel back in time and kill your grandma and, you never are born, so how did you travel back in time to kill your grandma? In this case though, you didn't travel back, just a coin. Perhaps it's related to when matter phases in and out of reality, the disappearing object phenomena. If something or someone can cause matter to phase out of reality, then keep in mind that means they're phasing out of space and time. Space and time are not distinct, they are one and the same. You cannot have time without space or space without time. So if you're phasing out of either, you're phasing out of both. So maybe when objects disappear, they can go back in the past. Case file number 313, written by King in the North, 2392. Whoever stole my lunchbox is gonna have hell to pay, if I can find them. I apologize in advance for the wordiness. I'm not much of a writer or a storyteller. So this one happened a few months back, and at the time I didn't know about this page or glitches in general. I just thought it was a strange occurrence, but after reading some of the stories here, I thought maybe it was a glitch. I work on power lines, and one day I showed up to the state park where we currently had our trucks parked. It's still slightly dark as I get out of my car and head on over to my work truck with my lunchbox. Some of the guys had already started backing up a truck to hook up to a trailer or something, and instead of going straight to my truck, I went over to help them. While doing this, I set my lunchbox down somewhere. After helping them, I go to my truck and get it started and do my daily checks on it. We're getting ready to leave and I realize I don't have my lunchbox in the cab, so I get out and go looking for it. At this point, none of our trucks had left yet, and I was having a hard time finding it. I mentioned to a coworker I was searching for it, and he helped me look. I told the other guys not to leave yet, so I could check their trucks as well. Nothing, I just couldn't find it anywhere. I checked all of them, plus the spare trailers and anything else we had in the parking lot. I then went back to my car to make sure I hadn't forgotten it there. No lunchbox. I don't want to hold up production any longer, so I give up and say I'll check the trucks in the parking lot later, when it's fully light out. We rolled out to a different spot that was maybe 10 minutes away, and I followed everyone else so I could see if it fell off of one of their trucks going down the road. Still nothing. I check everything again later when it's fully light out and still can't find it. It never turned up anywhere and never saw it on the side of the road, so it couldn't have fallen off the side of a truck. My coworker and I made jokes that one of the newer guys stole it and ate my lunch, but that was really just to make light of a strange situation that we couldn't explain. Again, not sure if it's a glitch, but it was definitely a strange occurrence. Bonus file, written by Falcon Dagenhart. An old woman inside a mirror. Hello. I've been thinking quite a lot about my experience with the paranormal, and I've decided I would like to tell you about past experiences for anyone interested. First of all, before 2014, I had always been a hard skeptic about the paranormal. I didn't believe in ghosts or stuff at all. But then, when I got into college, I met my now ex-girlfriend and we began a relationship. We are no longer together, so I won't tell her personal stories or details, as I don't have permission. I will, however, tell the paranormal experiences I had myself while with her. To get into context, my ex was an extremely sensitive woman. She was constantly feeling the energy in every single place she went. She could sense people's auras and feelings with almost scary accuracy, and she claimed she had been able to feel and see entities ever since she was a little girl. But of course, I always attributed it to her imagination or mere coincidence. That is, until I had my first paranormal experience myself. I still remember it vividly. We were at home, having a peaceful night with her best friend and watching some movies. To get a sense of my flat back then, I drew a little blueprint in order to understand the story. Here it is. We were all sitting on the two sofas while watching a movie, and my ex got thirsty and went to the kitchen to get some water. In order to reach the kitchen, she would have to then walk in front of a small hallway that connected with the rooms, a hallway with a mirror at the end of it. We didn't pay too much attention as she got up and walked to the kitchen, until she reached the view of such a corridor. Even at a distance, I could see how all color drained from her face, She rammed her body against the wall and slid down to the floor while starting to hyperventilate. What happened next unfolded in a matter of seconds. Her friend bolted from the sofa, thinking she might be feeling nauseous. And as she reached my ex, bam! All of the color drained from my friend's face too. I myself bolted towards her, and as soon as I reached them, I saw it. At the end of the hallway, inside the mirror, staring at us with beady, almost light-emitting eyes, there was a woman completely dressed in black, with a black fishnet shroud covering half of her face. She had no facial features other than those beady white eyes, but somehow I could feel that she was an old woman, and that she was crookedly smiling at us with a non-existent mouth. The closest description I can give is to the old woman dressed in black from the movie Insidious, but with no mouth or nose and with the eyes of the ghost from the movie Oculus. For a couple of seconds, we stared in complete horror, all of my body is heavily reacting with goosebumps as I recall and write how the air went completely frozen around us, and a feeling of extreme dread fell over the room. This woman, entity, thing, stared at us with that non-existent grin for a few seconds, and suddenly looked left and walked away, inside the mirror. She disappeared behind the edges of it, and as soon as she was gone, the feeling of massive oppression disappeared too, and we could breathe again. We stood there for minutes on end, completely frozen in fear and staring at the now empty mirror. My ex broke down in an anxiety attack and started shaking uncontrollably. Me and her friend, both skeptics until that point, looked at each other and basically described what we had seen to each other in perfect detail. We had seen the same thing. It had not been a hallucination. It wasn't group hysteria. We three had seen the exact beady-eyed woman in black in the mirror in complete detail. We didn't linger. I turned on all the lights, took off the mirror from the end of the hallway and hid it inside the wardrobe completely clad in blankets. We left the flat and slept, or tried to, in my ex-friend's house. As I said, I was not a believer until that point, and thus, I had no idea about which course of action to take from there on out. I didn't contact any experts, nor did I try to clean up the flat in any way. The only thing I could do was to try and not to think too much of it. I tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, born out of being sleepy or something, but I would later discover that thing was very real, and it would pay me a visit again soon enough. But that's as far as I'll go on this one. I'd love to hear thoughts about it and what you people think it might have been. Needless to say, this is not a creepypasta or a made-up story. As unbelievable as it sounds, it was 100% real, and it is one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had. The feeling of pure horror and dread that I felt that night was so strong, I can vividly recall it just by thinking about it. Case file number 314, written by Layla 101, A Road Trip to the Past. I live in a small town surrounded by other small towns. Larger cities are 2+ hours away. My mother and I would always go to doctor appointments in a town over. We have small towns in close proximity, but this one is an hour and a half away, and there is no town in between, only desert and oil field sites. Usually, we would leave the house 2 hours before our appointment, and then we would grab Starbucks since all of our appointments would be early mornings. It's just a little tradition we have. Anyways, we had been going back and forth for weekly to bi-weekly appointments for about a year at this point. We had an appointment at 9 a.m., so that meant at 7 a.m. we needed to be in the car leaving the house. We got a late start and didn't end up leaving until around 8 a.m. We had to stop to get gas or something like that. We didn't end up going to Starbucks and just headed on the road. We were speeding, but not a crazy amount, because there are occasional state troopers and traffic cops. We always listen to music on our way up there. We turn the music up pretty loud and probably terribly sing our hearts out. This time was no different. However, it was strange because we hit a random dead zone with no service, and that had never happened before and hasn't happened since. With the silence from there, being no music, we were talking about calling the office and telling them we would be late for our appointment, when all of a sudden the car just goes dark. All of the lights on the dashboard just simply aren't lit, and then it says low fuel, even though filling the car was part of what made us late in the first place. We didn't talk. We kinda just both looked at each other with confusion, and then didn't say much when the dash lights came back on. The music followed shortly after, and then the entrance to the town was right ahead of us. We had arrived in what felt like 30 minutes, and we didn't really remember much of the drive, like at all. I looked down at my phone to see the time was only 7 a.m. What? We hadn't even left until 8 a.m. We checked her phone too, 7 a.m. The time in the car was 7 a.m. I called my dad and it was in fact 7 a.m. There's no possible way we left at 5:30 in the morning because it would have still been dark, or at least fairly dark, where I live anyways. I would also like to note that our vehicle clock does not change time when we travel, even across multiple time zones. But regardless of that, there are no time zone changes between the towns we're traveling from. And even at that, we both had our phones and we were checking the time a lot at first, debating if we were going to make it. The gas now was also back to almost completely full, and we usually use more gas than what we had. The car was pretty much brand new, and there's never been an issue in the past, nor present, with it reading the capacity of gas in the tank. We acknowledged how weird it was, then spent the time we had getting food and going to the few stores that were open. We went to our appointment when it was time, and then went home. I brought up the story to her the last week to see if she remembers it still in the same way I do, and she does. I still can't come up with a logical explanation, no matter how much I think about it. Case notes. Okay, so real quick, aliens? Maybe. The thing with this is, it's not really time loss, it's time travel to the past. But I mentioned in a different case notes that if you manipulate space, you are manipulating time as well. So, if aliens can reach us, it's conceivable they can travel faster than light, and if they can, then they're able to travel in the past. That's the implication of it. In fact, that's thought to be the main reason why we will never be able to go faster than FTL. Even if we can create negative energy and create an Alcubierre drive, which is basically a warp drive from Star Trek, that would enable us to travel faster than causality. Because the speed of light isn't about light itself, it's about the speed of causality. If you can go faster than that, you're basically breaking the rules of the server and you're messing everything up. Nothing makes sense without the speed of causality. Like even gravity, the waves of gravity travel at the speed of light. Nothing with information travels faster. If it's possible, then it's almost like cheat codes to life, and then you can travel in the past and mess everything up. Like you said, there's no way you got there that quick. And you had a witness, you had multiple states of checking time, so it wasn't some accident where you woke up early. Like you said, it would have been dark if you had, so there is simply no explanation outside of maybe not aliens, but something caused time to shift into the past without a paradox in this case. But you were also transported closer to the town because you couldn't have made it otherwise. So something transported you back in time and also forward in space. Bonus file. Written by RandyBug91. A full sense reminder of his father. Case file number 317. To add context to this, my dad passed away in a freak construction accident a few years before this happened. He was tall and slim and athletic. He always wore a certain kind of jeans, and most of his shirts were either sandy brown or gray Carhartt t-shirts. He always had a huge set of keys hanging from the loop of his belt on his left side. This set of keys easily had 40 keys on it and jingled with every step. Our house was a Lincoln log-style cabin-in-the-woods type house. You had to go up a set of stairs to get onto the porch, then walk a good 10 more feet to cross the porch and get to the front door. Looking at the house, the stairs are on the left and the door is on the far right. The house is also built on a bit of a slope. From the top of the stairs, it's maybe 8 feet to the ground, but where the door is, if you were to fall off the balcony, it's a good 12+ foot drop, not something you could easily jump down from and run off quickly. Now, to the incident. I was chilling in the house on whatever regular day it was. The big window to the porch, between the stairs and the door, about 8 feet wide, had the blinds closed, but the bottom was raised so I could see out of about 1.5 feet of the window, basically from someone's hip lower chest level. I was walking from the kitchen to the living room, towards the door facing the window, when I heard that jingle, the one of my dad's keys bouncing as he made his way up the steps of our house. Then I see a person walking across the porch to the door. Jeans, gray shirt, keys on his hip. I'm about 4 steps from the front door. I hustle to it and swing it open. There's nobody there. It was broad daylight. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. There's no way someone could have gotten off the porch in the literal 2 seconds it took for me to get to the door. I had come to as good of terms as I could have been at. I don't think I was hallucinating. I haven't had anything like it happen since. but I really wish that if it was him, he would have stayed a moment longer. Case notes. I just want to say that I'm very sorry for your loss. You know, me and my dad, we don't really talk much, and yet still, I can't imagine losing him. It's just that one connection that family has that you don't have with anyone else. And yeah, all I can really say is that I'm sorry you didn't get more closure, but I'm happy that you got something at least. Many people don't get anything, and that is proper horror. Case file number 315. Written by Mouts93. Ping. From nowhere. About 4 years ago, I was working a 12-hour overnight shift in a taxi office. The office was a porta-cabin in the car park of a bowling alley/cinema, which is in the middle of an industrial estate. There is also a bar and restaurant in the building, and it is very busy up until about midnight. Once the place closed and everyone left, I was the only person around for a few hundred meters in every direction. It was probably about 4 a.m. or so, and the lines were really quiet. I had been sitting watching videos on YouTube for hours, when out of nowhere, I heard a loud and clear in my right ear, from slightly behind me, a voice saying, "Ping." It kinda sounded like the notification sound on the Messenger app, but the person really emphasized every letter of the word. The voice sounded like it was trying to freak me out. My heart jumped and I turned around and was like, what the fuck? About to attack the person who had snuck up on me. There was no one there. I was in a locked porta-cabin. The door was in front of me and there was no way someone shouted it from outside. It sounded like someone put their mouth right up to my ear. I even looked out of the window to check if someone was there, even though I knew it didn't make sense. I thought about the possibility of it being an auditory hallucination, but apparently if it was, it would have come from inside my head rather than from a specific location around me. Case file number 316. Written by OK, I'm Intrigued. Bodies all over the road, so they say. This happened a few years ago. My wife got pulled over for speeding on a barren highway that really no one takes. When the state police showed up, he was just chit-chatting, which is common in rural areas. He was in the process of writing her a ticket, but then at the last second, his radio went off and said, "Bodies all over I-80 between exit X and X." He said never mind, tore off the ticket and handed it to my wife. It gets really weird because she knows his name and swears he signed it. I didn't remember looking at the time. I was obsessed with the radio statement. Then when I looked at the ticket, all it had was a date on it. I said, "Sweet, we got out of a ticket." She said, "No, he signed it." And when I showed it to her, she looked like she saw a ghost. We Googled and Facebooked his name and the interstate accident, but never found anything. Rural areas could have been animal bodies, but didn't find that either. What the hell did the dispatcher mean by bodies everywhere? Case file number 317. Written by Oldie Bookworm. The Silence. This happened in 2005. I was 41, so I'm not young or impressionable. Reading this sub reminded me of this instance. It was about 10 a.m. and I had just gotten back from the grocery store, unloaded the car and went back for the last bag and to lock up the car. There wasn't usually much foot traffic on our street, but I always nod and smile when I see someone as a kind of hello, just automatically. As I headed to the car for that last bag, I nodded hello to someone who looked at me sharply. A moment later, I realized that what I had seen was unusual and did a double take. The person I thought I saw was very tall, at least 7 foot, and was wearing black clothing and had a hat. The face was thin and stark white. If I'd known what they were at the time, I would have said that I saw the Silence from Doctor Who. I did a quick turnaround and he was gone. No other people on the sidewalk. Haven't seen anything like that since. What do y'all think? Case file number 318. Written by Sage Wreath. The very instincts took my breath away. A few months ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling especially fidgety and restless. I had this strong urge to go outside, and while I normally don't listen to these kind of impulses, this time I did. I went outside, brought a stool to the middle of the yard and sat down and stared at the stars. I knew I was going to see something interesting. My body was tense and crackling with it. Soon enough, I saw a strange red light moving across the sky. There was no tail. It didn't break up. It was just this weird energy-laden light that appeared, moved directly across my line of vision, then blinked off. It took my breath away. But I'm a logical person. I immediately thought, okay, that was cool, but it was something natural. It had to be. Maybe it was a shooting star. I haven't seen a shooting star in so long. I'm not sure what one looks like. At that very moment, a bright white shooting star streaked across the sky, right where I was watching. I was pretty spooked. I yelled, "Thank you," and ran inside. But ultimately, I felt very calm, like I had seen what I was meant to, and I fell right asleep. I also had the immediate sense that someone was trying to get through to me and thought I was a dumbass for doubting the first light. Like, okay, you want a shooting star? Here you go. It definitely felt like I was bumping up against the edges of something very strange. Bonus file. Written by Leica Phenomena, BB. The soft sounds of a woman that doesn't exist. I'm 23, non-binary, and my boyfriend, 25, male, moved into a new apartment in May this year, and we have been experiencing some weird things since then. The first thing I noticed was when I was sleeping in one morning, my boyfriend was already awake playing video games in the living room. I was woken up to a woman's voice that sounded like a very soft and gentle voice, but also sounded like the woman was very nervous. It sounded urgent. She just said, "No, no, 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 no," each one sounding more pronounced. I woke up very confused and assumed that my boyfriend had a guest over. It sounded like a disagreement, so I quickly got up out of bed and went to see what was wrong. I swear on the way to the living room, I was still hearing mumbling voices in a conversation. I'm sure you guessed, there was no one there. When I talked to my boyfriend, he said there wasn't any voice. His video games were plugged into his headset, so it wasn't a TV either. I've had experiences with hallucinations when falling asleep or waking up in my younger years, although it had been years since that last happened. I assumed it was just that and thought nothing more of it. That was until my boyfriend started experiencing things as well. A couple nights later, he woke up to the same voice. He described it as an older woman's voice that was soft and gentle, and it said, "No, no, don't worry about it, I've got it." It again sounded clear, as if it was just having a conversation with someone in the room. This one somehow scares me more. He said he was waking up but fully awake when he heard it. At first, he thought it was me, but I was still asleep. He shook me awake because he was so unnerved. The scariest thing was maybe a couple weeks after that. My boyfriend had gotten up to pee in the middle of the night, and when he came back, I was sitting up and looking at him. Or more accurately, my side of the bed had a figure sitting up looking at him, but it wasn't me. It took my boyfriend a moment to realize he could also see me laying in my normal spot. It was like this figure was sitting up on top of me. Someone else was in my spot too, just staring at my boyfriend. He turned on the light, waking me up, but when he did, the figure vanished. He was very shaken up then too. I always hear noises when I'm home alone. We've had paranormal experiences in the past, but not like this. We smudge every time something scary happens, and things lighten up for a couple days, but considering there was nothing for the first few months we lived here, I'm nervous this is escalating. Any advice or feedback is appreciated. Case file number 319, written by Awesome Honey Badger. What do you do when a home phone rings, but you don't have a home phone? I woke up around 7 a.m. to let my dog out to pee. Shortly after getting back in bed, I heard our home phone, which my family got rid of years ago, ringing. The sound was clearly coming from the living room area. Once I realized we no longer had a home phone, the ringing stopped. I walked out to see if it was reconnected for some reason, but there was not even a home phone physically in sight, let alone plugged in. I was wide awake, so there's no chance this was part of a dream. It felt like a glitch in the Matrix where the universe fumbled and had a "shit, she doesn't have a home phone anymore" moment. Edit. A couple people have asked if it could have been an auditory hallucination or someone's cell phone ringing. I was the only person home, and my cell phone has a normal ringtone. Part of the reason I clearly thought it was my home phone ringing, for a brief second, was because my dog perked up when it first rang in the house. Could have been a coincidence, but either way, it spooked me. Case file number 320, written by G007W. Drive, use a road, and the next day, it doesn't exist. About a year ago, during the summer of the notable world event, I was working at Pizza Hut and made a good friend. We would hang out after the closing shift and drive around. I was living in the middle of nowhere in Indiana, so there's really nothing to do but drive around. Randonauting was pretty popular at the time, an app that gives you random energy points with coordinates, and we decided to try the app out. We were out near some cornfields and missed our destination. I was the navigator and was looking for a spot to make a U-turn. I was looking ahead on the map and saw a U-shaped road with a 3-exit roundabout, the second exit leading away from the main road. I tell my friend to turn into the road. We come up to the roundabout and I tell them to take the first exit. We exit the roundabout and this is where things get weird. We are driving back into the same roundabout. I freeze and my friend is asking me which exit to take. My gut tells me to take the second exit this time, so I tell them to take the second exit. This leads us to the main road. I'm incredibly confused and looking at the map, which still only has one roundabout on it. I said something about it being weird that there were 2 roundabouts when the map only shows 1. My friend has no recollection of the first roundabout. They still have no recollection of it to this day, but I remember it so vividly. The day after, I tried to find the road we took to make a U-turn looking at the map and was completely unable to find the road. It doesn't exist anymore. There's not even a roundabout in the area we were driving in. Ever since then, things have been slightly off. The house across the street from my house is 90 degrees from how I remember it. The main road to the shopping center is shorter. I know this because I time my drives. It used to be 13 minutes and now it only takes 8 minutes. I notice a lot of other small little things like that. I think I got transported to another timeline or universe. Case notes. Alright, so all I want to say here is that I welcome you to our universe. We have cookies, we have ice cream, we have a lot of great stuff. And hey, your trip to the grocery store is even quicker. Not bad. I think you'll do well here. Case file number 321, written by Knock Brew, a guardian angel with money. This happened a few years ago, back when all I'd do in my early 20s was go out to pubs and clubs, spend all my money with friends, regret it, and then repeat it all the next week. I'd often find myself saving just the right amount of money for public transport to and from work, just until I got paid. One week, I knew I had enough for a few days of travel until payday. What I didn't know was that my pay would come in a day late due to a public holiday that would interrupt the payroll system. So I had to account for that extra day to get to work, but did not have enough to get back home. I had a transport card that I had to recharge to scan on and off public transport. After getting to work that day, I had a balance of $0. The whole day I was stressing about how I would get home. I kept checking my balance knowing full well it was still 0. I didn't want to ask anyone for a lift because I knew no one lived in my direction, and I did not want to burden anyone over a situation I had ultimately put myself in. After work, there I was walking to the train station. I checked my balance again and obviously it was still $0. I thought to myself, I either have to walk all the way home, which is over an hour, or jump on the train without a ticket. I chose to walk home instead of risking a fine, as that would have made me even more broke than I already was. Just as I passed the station, I checked my balance one more time, as if something was telling me to, and instead of $0, it said I had 20. I stood there, gobsmacked. I checked the transaction history and there were no recent recharges. It just didn't make sense. It literally popped up out of nowhere and I could not find the source on how it came to be. So yeah, it all worked out in the end, but to this day it baffles me. I know 110% that I didn't have any money. The no transactions to say the transport card was recharged was what made it even weirder. I didn't investigate much further. I was just happy that I could get home. Simply, I called it a miracle. One that taught me a good lesson. Case file number 322, written by Matalina. Delicious pizza rolls every single day at school, only they never existed. Full disclosure, this was a little over a decade ago, in my first year of high school. I only just came across this sub, and this has driven me bonkers for years. I'm glad I finally found somewhere to share it. When I was in grade 10, we had a school cafeteria that you could purchase lunch at. I've always been kinda picky, but the cafeteria had one thing that I loved: pizza rolls that were just tortillas wrapped up with cheese and pizza sauce in them. These pizza rolls were only $1 or $2, so I ate them every day for a good 6+ months. Sometimes I'd go grab one where I was supposed to be in class because I knew they were finished being made around 11:30 a.m. I bought them enough that I didn't have to tell our lunch ladies that I wanted them anymore. They knew I was there for those glorious cheesy wraps. Anyway, one day I went to the cafeteria as usual and asked for a pizza roll. The following ensued. Lunch lady: "A what?" Me: "A pizza roll." "Like a piece of pizza?" "We don't have any pizza today, hun." "No, a pizza roll, like the cheese in the tortilla." "I'm sorry, hun, I don't know what you're talking about." "The ones I get every day. The cheese and pizza sauce in a tortilla. They're X dollars." "I'm sorry, I don't remember ever seeing those here." This script might not be word for word, as it's been a long time now, but it's pretty close to. But the whole thing weirded me out enough that I'll probably never forget it. At the time, I figured she must just be forgetting. They make quite a lot of food every day, and she's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. The next day, I tried again with the other lunch lady, and the same conversation happened. At this point, I'm a bit freaked out, so I brought it up to my best friend who's been with me every day and mooched some of my pizza rolls more than once. She says the same thing. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I spent I don't even know how long trying to get her to remember these snacks she's seen me eat and even eaten with me pretty much daily for months. And she's starting to look at me like I'm crazy. I brought it up to a few other friends. No one even remembers them. I even asked my now fiance, who went to the same school, though we didn't know each other at the time. Nothing. I have no idea what happened, or why I seem to be the only one that remembers these things, but I know for a fact I ate nearly my own body weight in those things in my first year of high school, and now everybody says they never even existed. Bonus file. Written by RLN-BNS, another incredible event at the Kipapa Gulch. Some years ago, I worked for a solar firm as a warehouse manager. I was in charge of the warehouse, which was located at the Kipapa Caves. The warehouse was 2 rented caves and the surrounding lots, which were fenced in. These caves were old military storage units dug into the gulch walls. The caves were about 200 feet deep and 20 feet wide and tall, reinforced with concrete. The solar firm stored their equipment and materials in the caves. The lots were where vehicles, heavy machinery, and a few 40-foot containers were held. I worked there with my driver. The caves had no electricity or plumbing, so a solar system and a backup generator powered the caves, and a porta potty provided relief. Cell reception was spotty at best, so I would have to drive myself out to make calls. When I started working there, I had no information on the history of this Kipapa Gulch. My work schedule was 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. When I started work, a lot of times it was still dark, so when I got there, I had to power up the caves. If the batteries of the solar system didn't have enough juice, I'd have to power up the generator. I'd normally have to do this using only the light from my phone. It was pretty quiet at our units. The neighboring caves were quite a distance away, and they were primarily used as storage, so we really didn't see anybody around. Rarely, a truck would pass by, going up the units further up the gulch. At first, it was like any other workplace, nothing out of the ordinary exactly. But soon after, I started to notice some weird happenings. The first thing that I noticed, which was weird, were the dead animals. Walking around the site, I would find dead Jackson chameleons all over the place. They were just there on the ground, dead. I figured cats were getting them, but I also noticed their carcasses were intact without damage. It looks like they just fell from the trees around the caves. There were also a lot of dead mongoose, myna birds, owls, pigeons, and ducks, all with intact carcasses, with no predatory marks like bites or scratches. Pretty weird, yeah? Now onto the really weird stuff. Every few days or so, I would hear banging coming from inside the containers. The containers were under lock and key. Every time I would hear the banging, I would have to unlock and open the containers and make sure nobody was somehow inside. I would open the containers and find nobody or any animals inside. After a few weeks of this, I said F it and stopped checking. I figured the materials inside were adjusting to the temperature changes. Okay. While working in the cave one day, walking to the back end, passing a certain spot, I smelled a strong scent of body odor. It was like I passed by very close to somebody, but nobody was there in that cave besides me. I walked to the back of the cave, did what I needed to do back there, and proceeded to walk back to the front of the cave. As soon as I got to the spot where I first smelled the BO, I again smelled the strong odor. Just as before, it seemed like I just passed by very close to somebody. I got to the entrance of the cave and quickly checked if I forgot to put deodorant on during my morning routine. But no, I did have my deodorant on. My mind playing tricks on me? I had a small desk set up at the entrance of the cave where I would work on a laptop. I would check emails from the office and do paperwork. Every so often, I would hear noises coming from the back of the caves. The noises were like something moving, and it sounded like something large, bigger than a mongoose or cat. At first, I would go back and check it out, but after quite a few times of finding nothing there, I said no. I again chalked it up to equipment adjusting to temperature changes. Okay. Again. One early morning, while it was still dark, before my driver left on his route, we heard a woman screaming from above the caves. The gulch walls were about 100 feet up, and the sounds came from up top. It sounded like domestics, and went on for about 15 minutes. My driver and I figured there was a subdivision up there, and a couple were having it out. A few weeks later, during a lull in my work, my driver and I decided to drive up the gulch and check out the other caves. We drove about a mile up the gulch and came to the last cave. From there, we could see our cave and what was directly above it. To our amazement, on the plateau above our cave, there was no subdivision. No houses, no roads, nothing at all. Who was there screaming? What the fuck? We had a lot of machinery, vehicles, electronics, and mechanical equipment, solar systems, etc. Everything would seem to crap out, even our personal vehicles and property. We would have to call our technicians to come and repair the equipment and machinery. They were constantly there repairing stuff, but what was weird was a lot of the times they would come down and find nothing wrong with the equipment, where all of a sudden the equipment started to work fine. After a while of this, we started to video ourselves starting up the equipment so we could show them we were doing it correctly and the equipment in fact was not working before we called them for repair. But this is the creepiest thing that happened to me there. One day I loaded my driver up and he left for his route. I then had to go do my business. I went to the porta potty and locked the door. Before I could do anything, the stall began to shake back and forth. I yelled out thinking my driver came back and was playing a joke on me. I unlocked the door, hopped out, thinking I would find my driver laughing. But no one was there. I ran up to the cave to see if anybody was around. Again, nobody was there. I called my driver. The call went through and he was already on the freeway. He thought I was crazy after I told him what happened. After that incident, I tried not to use the porta potty as much as I could. After a year there, I was laid off due to a slump in the solar business. Only then I decided to seek out the history of that place. Look up the history of old Hawaii Kipapa Gulch and let me know what you think. By the way, one of the caves across from where our cave was is where the illegal fireworks disposal crew lost their lives. It is said that a crew member was smoking in the cave where they stored and seized illegal fireworks.